Okay. Okay, is Brother Yusuf in there, y'all? Is he in there?
Yeah. He's been here.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, I'm so busy trying to draw. Okay, wait a minute.
The title was a bit misleading. We only talked about origin in Palestine for the initial. I just didn't want people to get the impression that
I can change that
Palestine,
too. Okay, hold on. Let me do that change because I'm.
There will be some Palestine stuff here, but more toward the end. We didn't open up with it, the homeland argument, which I'll kind of highlight at the beginning today.
Okay, hold on. I can change it right now.
But we had a massive amount of views, and then you took the video down.
I didn't take it down. Did I?
Yeah, the one live last Friday when I checked
it down?
We got done. It was like 125 already, and
for
then
real?
the next day it was gone.
Wait a minute, the live?
Yeah, the live got taken down.
Something's going on. There's somebody said I took my Q&A went. Did I?
Yeah,
I might. You know what? I'm sick. Seriously, I've been running. I just got diagnosed. Yes, I went to urgent care. And I have been suffering for the past 2 weeks with sinusitis. They got me on 5 medications. Now, he said he don't know how I've been walking around with no medication for the past 2 weeks. So I done made a lot of mistakes with all the videos. And I done deleted some that I shouldn't deleted and other ones that I should have are still on there.
You took the whole Friday, mine, and then yours after me were both removed.
That was, I might have by mistake.
But might have a mistake because we had like a record live turnout at least.
We did. Yeah, I think somebody did. I've been sick. I just now got medication. I done made, but our shorts are doing good. That's why. Yeah. That was. It started last Friday when I got sick. Yeah. Okay. Well, while I'm in here now. Wait a minute. Let me go back. This live is on. Okay, and give me the name title. So I can change this now while I'm in the live now.
It's kind of really to put a title on it. Give me really kind of quite difficult.
Let's call it what? Give me something. I can come up with it later. The antibiotics should be kicking in a minute, and also the steroids I'm on, and also that other crap they got me on. Let's call it
how we got here, because that's kind of really where it is.
That's even better. How we got to where we are.
Yeah.
I like that.
Because especially as tonight, as we start building up.
Especially with what's going on now.
Why we're in the predicament we're in.
I even like that. Yeah. Yeah. And what I'll do is put it in my generator, and that's going to come up with I got a new generator too.
I noticed Jamali, he shared it on his Facebook for the first time in 4 or 5 months. Because I think he thought it was Palestine only topic, and he had shared it on his Facebook.
Mention Palestine, and he'll share anything that's got Palestine in it. Yeah, don't worry. I got a new generator too, but I'll put that as a topic from now, and then my generator will even come up once it listens to your lecture, it'll make an even better topic. Because we got a new generator we're using too for the names and stuff. Okay, I'll put that as a topic for right now. And then when we're done with the lecture, the generator I got that I'm paying all this money for, okay, people coming in now. You guys can see? Okay, y'all can hear too? Are all the platforms linked in? Oh, let me change my back. Oh, turn your camera on, Brother Yusuf. Yeah, I'm going to take. No, we're done. I didn't do the class today because, y'all saw my little meltdown. Yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. The diluting. I'm going to cut mine off. I'm just setting it up. Yeah, I'm on my medication and new stuff. I look a little better. Yeah, the doctor said he don't know how I was walking around all this time. I'm drinking tea too now. Okay. Oh, what did you do to your background? Why do you look like that?
What happened?
Look at him, guys. What's wrong with his computer?
Well, I think the background is just blurry, something like that, right?
What did you do?
Yeah, it looked like the sunlight or something like that. That's what it looked like.
The sun is piercing in through the back. Let me shift it a little bit more to the side. Is it better?
We can see you, yeah, but let me see if I can do something too. Hold on.
I gotta get a new. This is an iPhone 14, but the camera the quality never comes through as good as it does if I do a regular video.
Is that
so Savannah, yours was doing that too?
Like this?
Yeah, but not on YouTube, but in the Zoom room, yeah.
Oh,
both
let
of
me
y'all
see
like
how
that.
he looks on. Okay, let me check him out. It looks better on YouTube. But you know what? I think it's Zoom too. Zoom just update. Let me see if I can take this off on Zoom. Hold on. It says, who's the host? Me?
Yes, you are.
Let me see if I can see Zoom set this wallpaper off. Let's take this wallpaper off. There. Okay, yeah, it's the Zoom. The Zoom puts this wallpaper on. It had him looking crazy. I took it off. There. Remind me to do that, guys.
Okay.
Okay, now he looks normal. But that wasn't you. That was something with Zoom. Okay.
It looks normal on my end.
Yeah, now you're because it was my wallpaper. It did that. My wallpaper did that. This is what Zoom. Okay, he looks normal to you guys too now. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, you can start whenever you're ready, inshallah.
All right, welcome back. For part two. In part one, we covered a lot of detail. We're going to kind of do a little mini review here in a second on what we touched on last week, and then see where we're going. We chronicled last week their rise and migration through Europe, ultimately their controls of all aspects of power. We're really going to see the kind of genesis of that, if you will, tonight with the Rothschilds, which I left off with at the end of part one, was the birth of Mayer Amschel Bauer, who would go on to become one of the most infamous men in human history, Mayer Rothschild. And we are going to see tonight how influential he was in taking over the economies of Western Europe, particularly England, as we already covered, some of their aspirations for France, and ultimately we will close with what was going on in the United States, which was a new country during that time. Things were not always as they are now, as we are going to see. But always, when you do something like this, you have to put these disclaimers in, because what they've done to shield themselves from this is they've hid behind their religion. As we exposed last week, the vast majority of these people do not even believe in God. It was something to the effect of 45% in some studies were active atheists. We chronicled the homosexuality that was prevalent in Israel. And when you dare to criticize a group of people for doing things that are documented, things that they've openly admitted to, you're inevitably going to be heard. You're a hater. You're a bigot. They don't really call you racist in this context, but they'll call you the famous anti-Semite. This issue has absolutely nothing to do with religion. They are not practicing, Judaism. We showed that already. We're going to continue to show that. I'm not someone who solely dislikes them or has grievances with them because of a religious reason. Granted, they did reject in some sections the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They did reject Isa. May Allah be pleased with him as well. They have rejected numerous prophets, but that is not the sole purpose of this critique. We are talking about things that they have actually done. We talked about the being expelled, the expulsions from a variety of nations, of different cultures, different belief systems. We showed the calculation of what they were doing, the usury, the exploitation of people, mass murder, slavery. We covered all these abhorrent moral activities that they were engaged with. This has nothing to do with race or religion. This is judging someone purely by the content of their character and the result of their actions and the intention. As we are going to see tonight, remember that word, the intention of their actions, because it is very clear, as you were going to see tonight, that they did not have our best interests in mind. A lot of people have tried to blow this off by saying, oh, they're just greedy. These people, the elites, the Zionists, the Illuminati, the Masons, Jew as in general terms, they're just greedy. We are going to see tonight that money was never the motivation. This was about planetary conquest and human enslavement. And for that, they are guilty as charged. This has nothing to do with any religious critique. Again, you'll hear some charges against Christians. Oh, the Jews killed Jesus, and this being their, the source of their animosity. But that is not the direction we are going here in this series. These go far beyond religious. Now, do all Jews deserve this? Absolutely not. There are plenty of Jews out there who are unaware, who have spoken out in favor of Palestine and a Palestinian state, particularly in the Orthodox communities. Sheikh Ibrahim Jamali has met with several of them. There are many brave and courageous Jews out there who deserve our respect and deserve our kindness. And of course, we are not talking about them. So when I use that term, I always just want to preface it with this, that we are not in any way damning an entire group of people, but we are talking about an elite that is comprised and overrepresented of a certain demographic of people who have caused these problems every single country they have dwelled. So that being said, we will now move on. So I started off last week with some questions. I had talked about the references in Genesis to the nation promised to Abraham and his descendants. So I asked you basically to think about those as we moved on. Now, we answered those questions. We showed clearly the vast majority, 90% of the current demographic of Judaism or Jews, practicing Jews in the world, were not of this bloodline at all. In fact, they were Asiatic and Turkish. They came from an area known as Khazaria. They have no ties to the biblical homeland. We established that. So is the promise from Genesis valid? Well, I could say arguably, absolutely. You know, it is. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a descendant of Abraham. And his ummah, are the true followers of monotheism. We are the last of our kind. Christianity is not monotheist. No matter how much they say, you can't have a trinity of three different beings with different sets of attributes and call it the same God. You simply cannot do that. The Son doesn't have the knowledge of the Father. The Father has supreme knowledge of the Son. The Son submits to the Father. You can't have three, beings being one when they have different attributes. They have different abilities. The Holy Spirit is not the same as the Son. In fact, the Catholic Church states that the Son and the Father emit the Holy Spirit. So therefore, the Holy Spirit has different attributes than the Son and the Father. So Christianity is not monotheist. And we've seen, of course, what is happening with Israel and Jews in general. Over 45% are not even believing in God. So we as Muslims, we are the keepers of true monotheism. The Prophet ﷺ was a descendant of Abraham. The promise, for all eternity dwells within us, within our creed, within our belief system. And plus these people that I highlighted, again, zero connection to the Holy Land to the tune of 90%. They cannot be the fulfillment of that promise, whether it be spiritually, they're not practicing, they're not following the law of Moses, the law of the Torah, which is equally represented in our Islamic Sharia. They're not following the laws of decency, obviously. They cannot be the keepers of this. This land spiritually belongs to the Ummah. We are the keepers of the flame of truth. And that's going to be opening up again where we're at. So we left off last week with the birth of Moses Amschel Bauer, the most infamous day in history in February 23rd, 1744. This man, again, as we are going to see here, just his impact alone. If only a being besides the Prophet ﷺ and the messengers in the past could have had an impact this man had for goodness, the world would be a much different state, obviously, than it is today. Now, the name Rothschild will be adopted early on. As I mentioned last week, outside of the money-changing shop, counting house of his father, there was the red pagan symbol. That red symbol, of course, rings eerie today when it is donning the flag of Israel is in, featuring that symbol, which they call the Star of David. You can go back and look at records. This was never associated with Dawood. This was never associated with Judaism. In fact, you could go back and you find it was associated with the opposite. It was associated with pagan deities of the time. This flag, basically, of Israel is basically a Rothschild symbol. We're going to get to that later in the presentation, as they own the vast majority of the land of Israel. And that symbol was outside the gold shop. It is something much more sinister, as we will uncover as we go through this presentation. So the name Rothschild simply translated from German to red shield in honor of this pagan symbol that donned the counting house. Now in 1760, Mayer Rothschild began working for a bank owned by the Oppenheimer family in Hanover, Germany. As you're going to see as we unwind here again through this presentation, you are going to see the interconnecting networks of these families and these people. They're all on the same team. They help each other out. They give each other the starts. They provide funding. It is a chain. It's a very intricate network that's going to be exposed a little bit tonight, and we are going to continue as we progress through the series. So while working in the bank, he has a relationship, obviously, with the Oppenheimer family. He now becomes close with General von Estorff. This general was associated with Prince William IX of the Hesse-Hanau family. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. They were one of the richest in Europe. Now, how did this family get its money? One of their key practices was they would hire what we would come to know as Hessian soldiers. These Hessian soldiers would be loaned to foreign countries for the purpose of war for huge profits. They made a killing doing this. Hessian soldiers are very famous in European history and were loaned to numerous monarchs, numerous causes. They were well-trained, trained fighters who would go for a fee, of course, for those who arranged it, not the men ultimately who would pay the ultimate price and die, but for the families that arranged it. Now, they still use the same tactics to this day. Now, instead of calling them Hessian soldiers, they call them UN peacekeeping troops. This disturbing practice is worth a whole other topic. I mean, UN troops are some of the most notoriously nasty and vile human beings you'd ever see in the modern world. If you see the blue hats of the UN troops in your country, nothing good is going to come of it. You could just spend a little bit of time researching that and see exactly what I'm saying is true. In fact, one of the reasons I'm so proud America has a Second Amendment, because if they try to come here and do what they've done in other countries, it's not going to be easy for them. Needless to say, we are armed to the teeth and we are ready. But that's a whole other story for a different time. But again, they continue their practices under a different name. It's always sold to you under a guise of basically it's peace. They're peacekeeping, troops. They're here for your benefit. Well, hardly. Now, Rothschild would take advantage of this relationship with William IX very early on. He would become very well acquainted to him. And by 1769, he would be appointed in the royal court as a court agent. This is one of the things we'll notice in the first half of this series is the way they endeared themselves to the monarchs. We saw this in the last part where we talked about William of Orange when he came back into England. They were already attached to him in the Netherlands or in Holland. And when they came to England, he brought them with him. He took the throne there. Immediately, these Jews were in all these instrumental positions, especially in finance and banking. We're seeing Rothschild working his magic here in Germany. So by doing this, he would become acquainted with rulers through this family all over Europe. These are intermingling bloodlines. They marry. They're all connected. Most of these people have been related. It's typically the same different versions of the same few families that were controlling 100% of the power. And it was just a big, giant mafia or club of controllers. One of the more disgusting things in European history is you see the way these monarchs at a time were revered, by the population when they never benefited the population of Europe in the slightest. You can go and study the feudal system, the exploitation, things that went on, the brutality, the barbarity. These people were not good by any means, not deserving of respect. And of course, for these Jews like Rothschild who attach themselves to these people, it's just evil helping evil, to make it simple here. So in 1770, Rothschild would lay the framework for the creation of, and someone asked about this few weeks ago, when was I going to talk about the Illuminati? And I said that the Illuminati and the Zionists, the Jews, the Masons, you're going to see when this presentation comes how interconnected they are. They're one and the same. So Rothschild would lay the framework for the creation of the Illuminati. The name of the Illuminati comes from a Luciferian term, meaning keepers of the light or the enlightened ones. This is very big, in Luciferian circles. They refer to Lucifer as the morning star. The morning star appears on the horizon, letting you know that the sun is about to rise. So in pagan culture, This was something to revere. The name was later attached, obviously, to what we would call the Shaitan, but it was about having that secret knowledge. You had that knowledge of what was to come. You were the illuminated. The people, the masses, they're the herd. They're the sheep. They are those to exploit, abuse, and use. You have the secret knowledge. They don't. It's your God-given right to rule over them with power, with hostility, whatever may be needed. And this, again, as you'll see, is heavily represented by their, what they're going to do with this organization. So Rothschild would reach out to a gentleman by the name of Adam Weishaupt. Weishaupt was a crypto Jew, which means a hidden Jew. He was posing as Catholic. So in the community, he was known as a Catholic. Deep down inside, he was a pure follower of, the Rothschild ilk and their creed. But on the surface level, he appeared to be a Catholic to those who knew him in social circles. The main teachings of the Illuminati were based on rabbinic Talmudic Judaism. This is another thing that a lot of Muslims are not aware of. They don't understand the Kabbalah. They don't understand Talmudic Judaism, the differences between this and what we would consider as those following the law of Moses. Big, big difference. The Illuminati would be based on rabbinical Talmudic Judaism. So in 1776, famous year, lots of things were happening in the world at the time. America obviously would declare independence. Well, Adam Weishaupt would basically complete the creation of this project. He would basically divide it up into a series of plans and tenets with goals, and he had all this stuff written and documented down as a manual for exactly what they planned on doing. So we're going to look at this as we go on here in a minute, and we're going to tell you how we know this. Because a lot of people often, when you get to this issue, they're going to say, well, how do you know about all this? You're just making it up. This is just based on hate. This is conspiracy talk. None of this is based in any historical data or reality. Well, we're going to show exactly, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how this knowledge made its way to the people, ultimately making its way to me to present to us tonight. So the plan is for arms to be provided, and this is the summary, if you will, and conflicts to be manufactured, keyword manufactured. They would arm the people, they would create conflicts, they are the social controllers, manufacturing hate, manufacturing dissent, whether it be people towards the governments, whether it be people towards each other, social causes versus social causes. All you have to do is look at the world right now, and you can see how that blueprint is still being used. I mean, you have such a divide in the United States on racial lines, on political lines, on viewpoints. And then you look at behind the scenes who's controlling every single one of these people. It's the exact same cartel, manufacturing and creating dissent. In addition would be the destruction of national governments as they knew them at the time. That mission is going to be accomplished. We're going to see that brick by brick as we go through this presentation. Religious institutions, very key one there. And this is when I've talked about Muslim 2.0, and I talked about all the imams. I mentioned it almost on a weekly basis. The social media influencers, all these people that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they have a platform. They've got all these views and all these things. This was part of their plan, was to infiltrate religious institutions and guide those people who go to those religious institutions for spirituality, for peace, to get close to Allah, and then guide them towards these deviant causes. We're going to come back to that one in a little bit later. And ultimately, the culmination of this plan would be the eventual destruction of the Goyim. The Goyim in there is cattle. We are to be used and abused as livestock and then discarded when we're no longer needed. And as you're going to see, these people enjoy this. It's not just something about protecting themselves. They enjoy inflicting pain and misery and harm on the Goyim. It is something that thrives this movement. So with the funding of the Rothschilds, Weishaupt would now, who's still pretending to be non-Jewish, he would infiltrate the Continental Order of the Freemasons. The Freemasons, what they were pre this time to what they've been post, are quite different. Freemasonic lodges are nothing more than recruiting tools for this movement, getting people indoctrinated and getting them to go out there and serve the system. They slowly took over the lodges across the world. Again, when you have access to unlimited capital Imagine what you're going to be able to do. When you have all this money, all this stuff behind you, you are going to be able to go into pretty much any organization you want, buy up influence, and take it over in no time. So this was part, again, of the initial stages of the creation of this movement. Infiltration in the lodges. The Illuminati would take over the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. We're going to look at that later. All the international orders, lodge by lodge, they would control it. Weishaupt would be given approximately 2,000 paid followers to help with the facilitation of this plan. So again, spreading the agenda out, providing capital to these men, paying them for their services, and getting them to go out there and continue to do it. These would be learned men. These are not just peasants. Nah. No, these were men of academics, science, finance, and ministry. These were powerful, influential people, knowledgeable men, intelligent men. These were not just some bum down at the bar. These were the best of the best. Because for as we're going to see later, as the agenda really started to blossom, this is something that would be weaponized against the population, all of our academic institutions, and pretty much all of our government institutions. There would be no stone in this plan left unturned. They would have agents placed in all strategical locations, like I mentioned, finance, history, academia, media later, as we're going to get to, obviously astronomy, science, health, and medicine. And throughout this presentation, we're going to be seeing each one of these industries and when they fell and who was the one that did it. So this is the big, part of this plan, is they had 4 key methods that they were going to use for control. Method number 1, we're going to spend some time on this one, would be to use bribery, and particularly sex bribery, to gain control over men in key positions of power. This method we discussed on this platform in detail. People have asked me a lot of questions about P. Diddy. We've talked about entertainers. Obviously, Jeffrey Epstein's island was allowing child rape and all sorts of other debaucherous things to control and blackmail politicians and media personalities. Power corrupts, and these men, they reach these heights. The dunya opens up for them. The dunya is here for the taking. If they're not disciplined men of faith and God consciousness, these men obviously will initially fall into light levels of sin, light levels of zina. And as it continues to progress, the way sin is, it's like any drug. You have to keep pushing it to the next level to get your rocks off, so to speak. And you find the behavior gets more and more bizarre, more and more debaucherous. They've said, and we're going to cover this tactic throughout this presentation, a couple cases later, probably in maybe a month or so from now, how they get women and beautiful women, spies, to attach themselves to these men and to gain information from them, gain access to their laptops, gain access to their phones. Obviously, that technology didn't exist back then, a little bit more less you had to worry about now. I mean, they're getting everything. And you're seeing these female spies attaching themselves to these men and getting all kinds of dirt on them, getting them to do things, and then bang, it's all recorded, it's all documented. So this is how they get men who are not a part of the agenda, but came from powerful families, or these were self-made men who had worked themselves up. They got the positions of power. And again, like I mentioned, the dunya is now open to them. Here come the beautiful women. And again, if you don't have that discipline, you don't have that God consciousness, you're going to give in. And now they got you. They've got you bribed. You better vote for that, buddy, or else, your family's going to see this. Or else I'm going to give this to the Associated Press. We are going to destroy you. Oh, that dirty money you took over here, we've got the records of it. It's like a gang. And I kind of made this comparison before, where when you join the gang can't take a risk that you're a police officer or an informant. So the gang gets you to do criminal acts, killing people, committing mass theft or robbery, and they've got dirt on you. They know you're not a cop if you committed the crime. Number 2, if you ever turn on the gang, they have this evidence that they're going to use against you, and you are now bound to the gang for life. It's the same thing here. They've used these tactics in entertainment. Entertainers are powerful. They have a lot of clout. If an entertainer like a Michael Jordan or a Brad Pitt or someone of that level came out and exposed these people, the average person out there would listen to them. It would carry tremendous weight. They couldn't allow that for chance. So you get them to vote the way you want. You get them to say the things that you want them to say, particularly sex bribery. Obviously, some you didn't have to come to that. Financial bribery would be enough. And that's what I believe was happening. We talked about with P. Diddy was, again, he was a mogul. He was close to billionaire territory. He was someone who got very famous, made a lot of money, had a lot of control, and they got all aspects of his life documented. If he ever decided to turn on them, they would expose him and take him to the cleaners. And oftentimes, things that you see right now, like what you're seeing with him, is their way of saying, remember who put you here. Remember where you come from, buddy. Because if you're going to turn on us, you're done. And they'll give you that little fear, if you will. And if you go back in line, they'll pull it, they'll get you off, and you'll go back to business as usual. But if you want to keep playing games with them, it's going to come out. So method one is something that rings true eerily to this day because they are still using it. People often, there's a famous politician from my state of South Carolina known as Lindsey Graham. Most people suspect that Lindsey Graham is a homosexual. It's kind of obvious. And there's rumors, there's a lot of material on him. He's a married man with kids. And he always votes the Zionist agenda. You can always count on Lindsey. He's going to support Israel to the death. It doesn't matter what Israel does. He's going to say Israel has a right to defend itself. He's going to go on that whole monologue again, and he's going to vote accordingly. And it's obviously most likely here method number one. Now, method number two is also extremely important. All of them are, but this is another big one. Using colleges and universities to recruit exceptional intellect of persons from high-stock families or just simply high-level achievers. Now, when they would identify these people in the fields of sciences, medicines, mathematics, these are people who are brilliant, who have been zeroed in on, because of their academic aptitude, if you will. Special training would be given to them. They would be provided scholarships. They would go to universities, top-level universities, where they would receive globalist-centric training, getting them to be indoctrinated into the one world government, indoctrinated into this system, hook, line, and sinker. Bill Clinton is an example of one of these such people. He was taken, provided a Rhodes Scholarship, which put this man from humble beginnings into Georgetown University and ultimately to Yale Law. You find this all the time. If you see somebody in front of you on a camera who went to Harvard, who went to Yale, who went to Brown, Cornell, Georgetown, these Jesuit universities, these top-notch private institutes, more times than not, it's because they're part of what we're describing here in method number two. Those places are not easy to get into. I've known people who scored as best a grades they possibly could, and they were not accepted into these institutions. But yet you'll find people like George W. Bush, who was there. George W. Bush, obviously, by observing him, is no man of high academic standing by any means, but yet he was there in Yale. And you find when you've got to be highly skeptical when you see people in these places. Yasser Qadi, as an example, Yale University. Look what Yasser Qadi is doing. These places come with a price. It's a deal. You get educated there, you're going to serve the system. If you don't, you're going to be brought back down and humbled and ultimately destroyed. So getting these people as a recruiting pipeline was central because they can't do it all themselves or the public would notice it. You've got to create an organic system that flows naturally, where you're going to get some people who are consciously aware of what they're doing. You are going to get other people who have been brainwashed by the lifestyle, brainwashed by the institutions to serve this agenda. So it flows, as I mentioned, organically. So method number three now that Weishaupt laid out in his plan would ensure that the first two categories of people are placed in the top decision-making capacities. As again, they have to create that illusion of equal opportunity. You hear all the time, in America, you can be anything you want to be. It's all achievable. That is a lie. If you or I spent every hour of my waking day working, bettering myself, there would be no chance I'd be the president of the United States. Every president of the United States, with the exception of Donald Trump, and they haven't found out yet, certainly on him, is connected to this bloodline, including Barack Obama through his mother's side. It's not by chance. Even Bill Clinton, he came from humble origins. His mother, there's a lot of questionable activities in her past where he's most likely appears to be a Rockefeller bastard child of an adulterous affair. So again, even him, who appeared to be at surface level to be some kind of high achiever, is still bloodline. So they have to create that image by giving you different last names, different faces, different personalities. But at the end of the day, behind the curtain, it's the same system. It's the same people. The populace would suspect something if you saw everybody was a Rockefeller or a Warburg or a Habsburg or a Rothschild, all these groups of people, a Cohen. You start saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? But no, you get a Clinton and you get a Kennedy and you get a Bush and a Carter and a Reagan and a Trump, all different. You have occasionally the Bush, two of them, in there. But overall, it's a diversity of personalities. As an example, when George Bush in 2004, he ran against John Kerry. John Kerry was this big liberal, and George Bush is the right-wing war hawk conservative. You're getting this kind of pay-per-view boxing match between these supposed two polar opposite ideologies. But yet, John Kerry was a bonesman from Yale, Skull and Bones fraternity. George Bush was a bonesman from Yale, Skull and Bones fraternity. The odds of that happening in an equal system is less than 1% of 1%. It's just not something that would occur without manipulation. So again, they've got to create that guise, that illusion of choice when it comes to voting and selecting leaders. And you see how patriotic people get. It's tribalism, my side versus their side. And we've highlighted all of that here before. But the controllers are unchanged. Now, in method number 4, this is a familiar one, was total control of the press. The press would be the ultimate key to sway public opinion. All news and information will come directly from the talking points of the controllers. For years, this was foolproof. There was no way for the average person in the 1700s, the 1800s, the first half of the 1900s, the 20th century, for people to really know what was going on outside of what they got in their local newspaper. And then when television came out, people started saying, oh, this is the real news here, because I can see images now. I know what they're telling me is the truth. And again, television reporters, you can go watch multiple news stations, and you'll see them reading the exact same script, the exact same wording sometimes, because they're nothing more than a theatrical actor. I remember my grandmother, God bless her soul, her generation, they loved Walter Cronkite and Peter Jennings. She used to tell me, I don't trust most of the media, but that Peter Jennings, I trust him because he had charisma. He was an actor. He read you the news sincerely. He seemed honest. You trusted him. And this plan was foolproof for a very, very long period of time. Up until the internet age, it was extremely effective in swaying public opinion. Now they have a new challenge, which is why you're seeing them taking control of social media. Because initially the internet was the Wild West. It was anything goes. Anyone could come out there with a camera and a voice and a message and maybe get discovered. But slowly but surely you saw what they did with the internet. They bought YouTube up. Now they censor YouTube. Videos used to be able to find on YouTube are no longer there. They're banned and removed. You're not going to find them in the search algorithms. There's so much good content out there that you're simply not going to see. They monopolized that. They monopolized Google early on and took control of that organization. Facebook, Instagram, all these platforms, TikTok, they own them all. They're all conglomerates at this point. And this is, again, why you see all these Muslims in social media I've talked about, your Andrew Tates, a lot of the other ones who I don't want to name to bring them attention. They pop up out of nowhere. Sneeko is another one. And they get huge overnight. They get millions of followers, getting $21 million streaming contracts because they're disinformation agents. You are not going to be that big without being part of the club. They're not going to allow you to have a voice. It's all in method number 4. Social media now is the new media. People are getting their news from the internet, from Twitter, unfortunately in some cases, from YouTube. And they're going to guarantee that these people are serving the agenda. They know what to say and the right things to say. And you see this all the time, with the Islamic movement, why these people are so famous. So you can kind of look at these methods, and now I'd like you to see the world with new eyes. Everything you've been taught from medicine, science, astronomy, health, history, and yes, religion has been given to you more times than not through a filter. If the person is big and famous, it is through a filter. It's not by chance. They're not going to allow someone who has an independent message, a truthful message, to get that level of exposure. How do you think now, by looking at that, they're able to pull off a scam like COVID-19 on such a grand scale? Because you have generations of doctors who've been taught lies to graduate medical school. I've been to university. When you go to university, these are the answers to the test. This is from the textbook. I need to get a good grade. You memorize and you regurgitate those answers on your exam paper or in your project. You've been taught lies about the human body. You've been taught lies about medicine. You've been taught all these things, and you need to get your 4.0 GPA. You want to get into medical school, you've got to repeat that information. It starts to stick. You have a whole generation of nothing but repeaters from the press, from the medical institutions, from the science departments, all around. It all starts to make sense why you had so many doctors during the COVID-19 scam talking outright lies. Things that safety professionals all throughout industry knew were lies. But you had top doctors repeating this. Either, again, they're part of the brotherhood or they've been indoctrinated in the system under those methods that Adam Weishaupt laid out. All around the world, they were telling you there was some major disease that was killing everybody. But your eyes and ears, when you looked around, the people you knew were telling you a completely different story. I worked in a plant with over 200 people. There was nobody there dying. Why was people dying from COVID only dying in the hospitals? No one was dying at home. If it's that dangerous of a disease, you'd have people dying everywhere. This happened during the plague. But yet during COVID, people only died conveniently in the hospital when they were getting intentionally dangerous treatment, such as ventilators and things like they were collapsing lungs and things like that. So again, how they're able to pull this off, because they have people at all these different learning centers, all these different hubs of power. How do you think all these phony moms, again, and social media influencers are popping up? How are they all coordinated? They all start talking the same deviant messages almost at the exact same time, following marching orders. That's all it is, So now you might ask me, well, Brother Yusuf, how do you know this? How do we know this plan was correct? It was a secret. These guys are conspiracy. They're working behind the scenes. Well, how do we know? Well, I'm going to tell you how we know. Through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know. And we know all the details because they were found. In 1784, Adam Weishaupt sent a carrier. And again, we're looking at the world back then. There wasn't no encrypted messages. There's no phone calls, on private cellular networks. You had to use the old-fashioned way, which was a guy on a horse meeting another guy on a horse, maybe going across the boat to meet another guy on a horse. You had a courier system. So Adam Weishaupt sent a courier with a mission to go from Frankfurt, Germany to Paris, France. This courier would contain the marching orders for this plan. The document would detail that the first major strike in their agenda would be the French Revolution. So in the act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the courier was struck by lightning. He was on his way to deliver these documents. A bolt of lightning came down, struck him, and killed him. The Bavarian police found this. First, they found the body. They started searching the body. And lo and behold, they found this documentation. So without Allah, we do not know of this plan. We may have been able to infer it. We may have been able to speculate, but now beyond a shadow of a doubt, when you look at the plan there that was highlighted in these documents and you see what they're doing, you know it's the truth. So the Bavarian government immediately took this seriously. They launched raids on lodges and the homes of suspected members. In 1785, the Bavarian government would order the closing of all lodges, and they outlawed the Illuminati or Illuminism throughout the area. The Bavarian government would do the best they could to warn the world. In 1786, they published the findings of the document. The document would be entitled The Original Writings of the Order and Sect of the Illuminati. This would be sent to all major religious and government heads throughout Europe. They wanted to sound the alarm. There's something bad afloat. We need to respond collectively to this plan. But they were ignored. I wonder why. Because they were unaware that this plan had already been brewing, particularly in Western Europe, much longer than Central Europe. And because they had positions of power throughout those societies, and particularly England, they already controlled the banking and the commerce there. These all fell on deaf ears, intentionally basically ignored, and the agenda would move on. So again, you'd ask, if France, if you're, in the French government, the monarchy at the time, the church, why would you again ignore something when they are outlining in that document you are first that they are going to overthrow? Well, again, there was agents already in place in the French government. So again, Allah does not do anything without a purpose. Allah is always in control. Although basically this original document, this published, did not achieve basically the goal of stopping this project. Because of this act of God, we're here right now talking about this. Other people have exposed it decades before I sit in front of you here today, because of the grace of Allah. Allah is always in control. Always we're going to find out what the truth truly is. The light will be shined on the darkness. So because the warnings were ignored, the French Revolution would succeed. And they removed from power, particularly their target of the Catholic Church. The state would seize control of Catholic-owned lands and turn it into currency. The state would assume funding of all Catholic responsibilities, caring for the poor, and in particular, appointing clergymen and bishops. Now, if there's ever any Christians watching me, I hope there is. Those who blindly follow this Catholic Church, I've seen them in social media. They're wondering, why is the Pope like this? Why is the Pope promoting such deviancy? Why are they being tolerant now to homosexuality? Why is the Pope saying the things he's saying? Why is the Christian church going in the direction it's going? You have your answers right here. Because it was a target. They wanted to make sure that these appointed positions were controlled. They would put their guys there the same way they put their guys in the academic institutions, in the media companies, in the medical establishment, in all the major fields. Same exact thing was done here. So in 1790, Mayor Rothschild, after this coup d'etat, if you will, would famously state, "Let me issue and control a nation's currency, and I care not who makes the laws." They understood the game. They understood how to manipulate and control. The ultimate weapon was control of the currency of the nation. And now they weren't just done with France. France fell. We're talking about Napoleon a little bit today, and then as we bleed into next week's, and the attempts to override this. But in 1790, Mayor Rothschild, the United States was in Rothschild's crosshairs, if you will. The United States at this point in time was 14 years into its existence as an independent nation. No longer colonies like it was previously. They had independence from the crown. And the Rothschild-controlled asset, who goes by the name of Alexander Hamilton, who's heralded in American history, I wonder why, would create the first bank of the United States. It's called the First Bank of the United States, and they signed a 20-year charter. This is under George Washington. Alexander Hamilton was there, Zionist-controlled agent, controlled agent, pushing this legislation through. And now the United States had a central bank just like that, not even basically a new country, barely a new country, an infant, if you will, and already they had this. Within 5 years, if you listen to part one, you can pretty much guess what happened. The United States would borrow $8.2 million. This would overall create massive inflation during the era, which would cause U.S. prices to rise by 72%. And this, of course, caused all kinds of problems, the value of the currency, Again, taking your purchasing power. We went through that cycle in part one of how they slowly bring you into poverty and how they seize your assets, your real assets, not this useless paper money they're giving you. It's worth nothing but the paper they're printing it on. They're getting your real things, your agriculture, your land, your companies, your institutions, your oil and gas in the modern day age, your steel, your raw materials. These are the things they covet. These are the things that have value, not this useless paper money that they've duped our politicians and our governments into taking. Thomas Jefferson would lead a charge, against this. Thomas Jefferson would famously state, "I wish it were possible to obtain a single amendment to our Constitution, taking from the federal government the power of borrowing." Thomas Jefferson early on was a righteous man. He saw the writing on the wall that this is something that is to the detriment of the United States. This cannot continue. This is unsustainable. You've got basically politicians in there, who are borrowing at will. And we're going to get to that here in a minute as to why. So again, what incentive then do wealthy men in government have not to take cheap money? It is the ultimate drug. They can help their friends out here. Okay, we'll vote on this for you. You give us money, we'll give you this back in funding. You can create all these different opportunities to make yourself tremendously wealthy, to make your friends and family tremendously wealthy. And again, you're not going to bear the brunt of the suffering for this because you're at the top end of the chain, at least initially. As we talked about last week, those who get access to the money first benefit the most from it. What this is going to do, however, is going to inflict massive suffering on the average middle class and lower middle class and their quality of living. Population is going to lose their purchasing power. All of a sudden, they're barely able to feed, house, and clothe themselves. But for those wealthy politicians, you can look at the ones like Nancy Pelosi as an example, with all her dirty businesses, insider trading. Nancy Pelosi's worth over $200 million at this point, from getting a salary of $175,000 for however many years she's been in there. Either she's the best at saving money, she saves more than she earns, actually, in fact, or she's involved in a lot of dirty dealings and corrupt business. But does Nancy Pelosi care if $200 million is now worth what $50 million was in 1960? Absolutely not. Because $200 million is a lot of money, $50 million was a lot of money in 1960. So she's able to keep up with the inflation. Her power is not changing. She's getting that same thing as the bankers. They're getting access to more of it and more opportunities to have more of it. They don't care if it inflates. Who does this affect? It affects the guy making $75,000 or making $60,000 or $50,000. We're now making $50,000 nowadays would be like making $10,000 to $15,000 a few decades ago. Now you're facing a problem because you can no longer live comfortably. You can barely live at all with a salary that would have been extremely comfortable a few years ago. When you got $200 million of this fake money, you're pretty good. So always, as Thomas Jefferson is warning, the incentives for our politicians is very strong. And no government should be allowed to borrow money from an external source, a cartel of foreign bankers. Now, John Robinson would publish a book entitled Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in secret meetings of Freemason, Illuminati, and higher-ed societies. So he published this book, and we're going to look at who he is in a minute. Really it's a big, massive title, but he wanted everyone to really catch your eye here with this book, showing that this was a broad conspiracy going after all aspects of life. And he was a high-ranking member of the Scottish Rite and was approached by Weishaupt to join in on the plan. He was an influential academic, an intellect, smart man. He was, offered basically, you want in on this. We could use people like you. Going back to plans I talked about earlier, Plan 2, where they would recruit highly successful, academic, intelligent people. So he pretended to go along with this plan. So this is our second source of information here, other than the Courier we covered earlier. So he's basically asked to join. He agrees. All the while, he's secretly doing this to gather information to expose the plan and save Europe and the West. He was one of many during this period of time. We talked about trying to stop this from the Bavarian government and their agents. Now we have Mr. John Robinson trying to do the same thing. all falling, unfortunately, on deaf ears because so much of the agenda was already well on the way. In that same year, we have here 1798, another monumental event, which we're going to look at next week, would take place where Mr. Nathan Rothschild, he was the signature son of Mayor Rothschild, the patriarch of this dynasty. Nathan was the most cunning, the most ruthless, the most brilliant, most, you could say, brilliant in a demonic or evil sense, not brilliant in a beneficial to humanity sense. And he was provided a large amount of money by his father. His mission, go to England and totally take control of the economy. Now, they already had it well underway as we went over in part one, but they wanted more. They wanted to get their hooks in all aspects of British military-industrial complex. They wanted to get assets in all the British economy, from agriculture to steel to everything that was going on there. They wanted to have absolute control over it. So Nathan's mission, large sum of money, goes into England with a plan. We're going to go through that one in part 3 as we get to that, and it's a historical date. Now, in 1800, after the French Revolution, guess what? The Bank of France would be set up. You can't make this up. You had the Catholic Church losing their land, appointing the bishops. Here's the bank. So the same process, same playbook. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte, who was rising during this period of time, would famously state, the hand that gives is among the hand that takes. Money has no motherland. Financiers are without patriotism and without decency. Their sole object is gain. And did he mean gain in a material sense, or he meant gaining in total power? Obviously, we know which one as we're studying these people. Finance is there for them. They print money. They can have anything they want. This is something much more sinister. Now, Napoleon will go on to state his objective in 1806 was to remove the House of Hesse-Kassel. We talked about them earlier with the Hessian soldiers, from rulership and to strike it out of the list of powers. Now, as we look at Napoleon next week, when I was growing up, they taught me Napoleon was one of the antichrists. I mean, Napoleon was just evil. He was like Hitler. These are the bad guys. These are the guys in history, along with Andrew Jackson, who we're also going to talk about in our coming sessions as well. These were men to be vilified and demonized. And we're going to see exactly why that is, because who's controlling the press? Who's controlling the perception of these men? And they've done everything they can to run these men's names into the ground. Henry Ford from Ford Automobile Company, we'll get to him way later on down the list. As we get to the 1900s, he is another of these such figures. So upon hearing of basically Napoleon's threat, Rothschild partner Prince William, we went through him earlier, one who facilitated his appointing to the court, who helped Rothschild really get going with government and monarchy. He fled his home in Germany to head to a safe haven in Denmark. They were afraid of what Napoleon's mission was going to be. And he would leave care of his fortune, guess who, to his close buddy, Mayor Rothschild, for safekeeping. This fortune was estimated at the time to be $3 million. That is massive. We were talking about the United States just a few minutes ago, had taken a massive loan for $8+ million. That was a government. This man himself had $3 million in his name that he left to his close buddy for safekeeping. That was a lot of money during that time, a lot. And this man was extremely powerful, and you can just see the level of corruption that this Prince William was involved in. So not all was well, however, for their plan in the United States. And part of what prompted me, some brothers had asked me before, and some sisters as well, to talk about the fall of America. Because America, we talked about, had a central bank in the early days of its country. But what happened in 1807 was we had a new president, Thomas Jefferson. And he would make a profound statement: nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. This is in 1807. He was already savvy enough to see what was going on. He goes on to say, truth itself becomes suspicious by being put in that polluted vehicle. So it's so polluted in such lies that even when they do say the truth, you don't necessarily even believe it because it's overshadowed by all the lies. The real extent of this state of misinformation is known only to those who are in situations to confront fact within their knowledge with the lies of the day. So we see a profound quote here from Thomas Jefferson. He knew what was going on. Even back then, they were seeing what was wrong with the media and how the media was outright lying. And you couldn't even discern truth from falsehood because it was all just a jumbled up mess. Now, in 1811, that bank charter we talked about in 1791, it's 20 years now. The charter to renew the Bank of America was up for vote in the U.S. Congress. This was during the time, again, massive inflation that this bank had caused. So you had a revolt in government to strike down this charter. And Nathan Rothschild, who was now the head of the family, needless to say, was not happy with this. He would go on to issue the following statement. Either the application for renewal of the charter is granted, or the United States will find itself involved in a most disastrous war. This is a threat from a foreign banker that should have been taken utmost serious by the United States against a new country at the time. But here you have a man living in England issuing a threat like this. I'm going to bring you war if you don't vote for this charter. And these are the people we're told, the descendants of these are our greatest ally in the state of Israel, the Middle East. This is the ally. This is the great people they are. Again, it was, if you're not going to be our slaves, we are going to kill you, is basically what Mr. Nathan Rothschild would say. He would go on to say, we're going to get to that one here in a second. I'm sorry, I missed my note line here. The U.S., of course, would ignore Mr. Rothschild's warning. They throw it out. The charter was not going to be renewed. The bank was going to be dead on arrival, was not going to be renewed, which then he would go on to say, which I meant to say now before, teach them imprudent Americans a lesson, bring them back to colonial status. So he threatens the war before. Now the charter is not renewed, and he's saying, we're going to teach you a lesson. You're going back to colonial status. We're basically going to take you back to the colonial days. You are going to be ruled over. We are going to control you. So again, you have another threat. And this is the Zionists today, isn't it? They are now dragging us into another of their wars. Our young men will go there and get killed, fighting and dying for this wretched lot, these wretched people. Our government would stand up to them during this period of time. But nowadays, they do not. The control has just grown. This plan has fully blossomed into the United States, and we see pretty much zero realistic pushback, against this agenda. It's the same thing. We're seeing it now. If the United States does not support them, God knows what they'll do. What kind of harm economically or culturally or they'll bring on the United States. As we're going to get through their system here in America over the next coming weeks, you'll see again, every stone, no stone is left unturned. It is all here. So when we go forward, we are going to look at next week. We are going to continue the session going through the aftermath of this. What were the consequences that Nathan was speaking of? What was he going to do? What war did he promise the United States? And it would happen in a year. It didn't even take a year back then was like a month now. How long it took to coordinate, to move, to organize. Within a year, the United States would be involved in a war that would threaten its very existence. A war that when they give you the motives in school, they conveniently leave out these statements. These are documented statements. These are threats. And then afterwards, you have the action showing the threats were real, that he intended to do everything he stated that he was going to do. And the message was clear. You're either going to be controlled or we're going to bring bloodshed, on you. And we'll start off with the War of 1812 and Nathan's promise, being fulfilled. But ultimately, the United States would triumph, in that conflict. And he would not get exactly, what he had hoped for. And they would go back to the drawing board and continue again and again until ultimately they would defeat us. And again, we're going to chronicle that journey as we move on here. So I will stop there. As always, questions, answers, or comments are welcome. Sister Layla? Anyone there?
Yeah, she's coming. She must be away.
Let's see if we have any questions, comments.
Yeah, it was a great class. Thank you. I don't see any question in Zoom. Zoom people, do you have any questions? Well, let me check on YouTube.
Okay.
No, there's no question on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so yeah, we'll close. Wish everybody a blessed week. Inshallah, we will continue this next week. As I mentioned, we're going to now go up from 1812. We're going to look at that conflict. We're going to go back to Napoleon. We're going to see how they progressed it. All that in the Palestine series that I had done. Same thing. That even the early 1900s compared to now, they've just steadily been building it brick by brick by brick to the point that they have absolute total control. And we're just going to the infancy of the conquest of America at this point in the series. So with that being said, I wish everyone a
Wait a minute, hold on. You got a couple questions. I couldn't get my mic on. Brother Adam on YouTube says, because of Lackum, Dinocam, I can't read his language. Because of,
understand that.
wait a minute, hold on. Because of Lackum, Dinocam, we Lee Adine. You know what he's saying? Brother Adam, can you retype that?
Some typos or
I don't know what it, because he's in a different country too. I don't know what he's typing. Brother Adam, retype that. And also another brother here says, what is your take on what's happening over with Iran? He said, how are we supposed to feel as Muslims? I know Iran is Shia. Do we just stay out of it and not take sides at all?
This is I love that question because we're seeing a lot of our control people on social media. They initially were taking the side of the Zionists, and then they got called out for it. Then, you had just recently our buddy Yasser Hakim. He went out there and he said, that we should support Iran. I guess his Saudi paymasters took him in the back room and said, hey, wait a minute, you can't say that. I answer it like this. They're Shia. Do we disagree with them? Absolutely. Absolutely. Fundamentally, there are certain Shia who have said the most disgusting things about Aisha, about Abu Bakr, about Umar. These go beyond fundamental disagreements, just nasty language. Obviously, some Shia practices that are abhorrent to us. But in the end of the day, if you look at the amount of countries Iran has attacked in the last 300 years, it's zero. Iran has never been an aggressor. Iran is not threatening the stability of the Ummah. Iran is not the reason you get charged 8% interest if you want to buy anything these days. Iran is not the one destroying the value of our currency. Iran is not the one flooding our borders. Iran is not the one putting these imams in place to promote homosexuality and other deviancies. Iran is not the one responsible for the things that we're suffering from today. Iran is not the one that put those regimes in place in that part of the world, which has fractured the Ummah, which is controlling the holy sites, bringing decadence and deviancy there. Iran is not doing any of those things. I have no issue with Iran as a nation. Ideologically, yes. Do I disagree with the Shia? But again, Iran is not responsible for one of my problems, one of my issues. On the other hand, you have the other side. We just spent an hour right now talking about what these people have done to the economics, to the social lives of people, what they've done, and we're going to get more and more to that. You're going to see it's a list that's about a mile long on one hand versus a list that's just a few obviously major differences nonetheless, but from as a political entity, as a nation, is Iran stopping us from pursuing our destiny as an ummah? No, absolutely not. So that's where my opinion, my stance lies. You know, I'm obviously supporting of the Iranian regime. They didn't attack anyone. They were attacked without cause. We always hear from the media, oh, Israel's defending itself. And this is the equivalent if you walked up to somebody in the street, you punched them in the face, and then that person attacked you back, and you're like, oh my God, what is he doing? What is he doing to me? I got to defend myself. And you go get a gun and you shoot, and you say you're justified. Absolutely not. You know, who started this conflict? Who's the one doing this? And all these Muslim Sunni nations over there, all the people within those nations, do you think they're going to stop at Iran? Do you think that's the end? These same people thought they'd stop at Iraq. They thought they'd stop in Afghanistan. They thought they'd stop in Lebanon. They thought they'd stop in Syria. They thought they'd stop in Libya. They thought they'd stop just about everywhere else over there. Do you think they're going to stop at Iran? Absolutely not. Turkey, Pakistan. They've already talked. You just said it a couple days ago. Pakistan's an Israeli guy on television. Can't remember his name. Somebody who worked for the government said Pakistan's nuclear program needs to be reevaluated. They shouldn't be allowed to have these either. So what are they going to attack Pakistan next? Are they going to attack Turkey next? You know, so again, this is where it is. I mean, this is what we have to understand and who we have to support. Who's the one causing us these problems? Who's the one blocking our destiny? Who's the one bringing bloodshed and harm? You know.
Okay, the brother's asking what is Layla's opinion. Layla's going to talk about it for the Q&A at 9:30. Ask me that question for 9:30. All I'm going to tell you is there is no power, there is no might other than Allah. And Allah already done answered that question. Can't nobody stop nothing but Allah. And ain't nothing happening unless Allah wills it. We'll talk about that at 9:30, guys. And we'll tell you what the Prophet said. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Let me see. What did Jamila write? Oh, Jamila wrote, thank you, Brother Yusuf. This was a very good class. History was and is very colorful. I agree. That's why I got a degree in it. Literally. Exactly. I love history too. Let's see what else we got here. I'm looking at all the streams. Make sure I didn't miss anything.
These are the missing pages that they don't give you in the history books.
Exactly.
Those pages were stuck together.
Mashallah. Yes, excellent job. They're all saying excellent, excellent. Mashallah. Yes, he's going to continue with this next week. Exactly, Sister Sharita.
And to add to my Iran point, what Sister Layla said, also the bystander, all control. But from a moral standpoint, Iran is obviously not the bad guy here. We can look at their history, as I pointed out. Look at the history of the other side. It's not even comparable. It's not comparable. I mean, what has Iran ever done that's negatively impacted any of our lives?
They killed Uthman. Oh, we're going to talk about that in my class. They did a lot.
Well, that's
yeah, we'll talk about it 9:30.
That's not the same people.
That's why the Prophet said, stay out of it. Stay out of the politics, let Allah take care of it. They did a lot of bad things and still are. They ain't even following our Quran. We'll talk about it. Y'all better work on y'all Aqidah. Don't take sides and none of this. Let Allah. All these hadiths are playing out. The Prophet said all this would happen. It's happening. You better work on yourself, people, so that when the bombs come here, that you go out with a smile on your face. Allah promised He gonna raise you individual. They did.
Iran's the only thing in the way from them going after Pakistan, them going after.
No,
Turkey.
they ain't. Allah's in control. Pakistan got issues too. They know it. All that bitter. We the problem. We the problem is us. Allah says, it talks about it in Surah Araf. We know what we did and what we doing. I'm a witness to what they did to me yesterday. But no, I know what you're talking about, though, Brother Yusuf. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with Saudi Arabia, has got their own issues. And every country, every people. You know, obviously, we're not in the right state. I mean, we aren't. I mean, spiritually.
But seriously, it's our fault. Everything that happens because we brought it on ourselves, like Allah
Well,
said.
absolutely. I think we'd all agree with that. One guy famously said, a long time ago, he said, "You get the Jews that you serve."
Oh, yeah.
This was a Christian saying that. And he was meaning basically that when you're morally corrupt inside, the one who wants to corrupt you will have an easy time doing it. Yeah. That you get what you deserve from this group of people. If you're not weak on the inside already, they have no power. Exactly.
That's the point. That's what we're going to talk about at 9:30. We weak because we weak. That's why they can do what they do. If we were strong like them companions, they wouldn't be able to do this. Yeah. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, he's going to be talking about this for a while. Yes, they all saying how much they love this. This is what.
Yeah, it's going to be long. I mean, we're not even through the 1820s yet. There's so much. 1900s is even more because now you have the technology. You have railroads that come out, the automobile, the plane, and of course their agenda can now go at light speed. Their communication enhanced. We talked about a courier. I mean, they're using a courier at the beginning of this agenda. They would progress to fax. They would telegraph. Obviously the mobile phones to digital imagery. I mean, they just got more and more tools at their exposure, and the agenda just escalated. So we get to the 1900s, it'll be a lot more.
The brother here asked, he said, what is it that's caused Trump to now say he was ready to join in the war with Israel? He said, but why has he now said today, I'm going to do negotiations for peace now. I'm going to give him 10 weeks and I changed my mind. I'm not going to support Israel with bombing. I'm going to try to negotiate some peace now. He said, what happened to make Trump? Was it Saudi Arabia doing some more stuff?
We'll see. That's interesting. Trump's base in the United States has turned on him completely. There was a poll on Twitter that got close to 1 million votes. 90% basically stated no involvement of the United States in this war. You've had prominent conservative right-wing people who have been nothing but pro-Israel for the longest time, like Tim Pool and this other guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, his face in my mind. Tucker Carlson is another one of them. And again, they recognize the pulse of the population. The American people are tired of this. This is not for the American soldier to be. This is not. We have enough issues domestically. We need to clean up our standard of living. The cost of living has gone through the roof. These are the issues that matter to everyday Americans. Not what this. And most Americans now have seen Israel's real face. They can't keep saying this little Mighty Mouse over there, this little David fighting the big giant of Goliath. They can't really use that narrative because Israel they didn't even stage an event for this conflict that made them look like the good guy. They went out outright with aggression, and it really backfired in terms of public opinion. We'll see what Trump does. I can't say definitively. I know only Allah knows, and the secret meetings that are going on behind closed doors. Exactly. I mean, if I have a gun to my head and have to give an answer, I'd say we're going to be in this conflict unless Iran completely agrees to whatever the demands, outrageous they may be, are made on them. But I would see outside of that, there will be American involvement in some form. There always is. I mean, I've never seen it go the other way. But God willing, Allah is in control. Whatever path we're guided on is where we're going to, adapt to, how we're going to adjust. But when I was growing up, just to throw this in, I mean, there was a conflict in the Middle East. You looked at a poll, and I'm not just talking polls. A lot of the polls are rigged, obviously. Just people that I met and I talked to. Oh, we got to protect Israel. Now you're just not seeing that. You're really seeing a shift in public opinion. If you go to the 90s, early 2000s, overwhelming people were pro-Israel. No matter if Israel's in trouble, it didn't matter. We got to go in there now. But what they did to Gaza and this, I mean, really, it is shifted. People have had enough of it. And I said that one poll was 90%. And I can kind of vouch for that from people I've talked to in public about this. And it's kind of pretty equal to that. There's a real shift going on in consciousness and awareness of this issue.
Brother here is asking you, are you Chechen?
Am I what?
I can't, you know, I can't.
Oh,
pronounce.
Chechen.
Yes.
No, I'm Lithuanian on my father's side and Irish English on my mother's side, born and raised in the United States. But I do get that a lot because Chechens basically are white Russian Muslims, and they do have the same complexion, same skin tone, the beards and thin hair and all that stuff. Also, Dagestan, also I've gotten that one a few times as well, which is where the UFC fighter Habib is from.
Alhamdulillah. He said, nice to meet you. He's from off the
Oh,
Kick.
nice to meet you always. Welcome.
Yeah, he's from off the Kick. He's Keshan. I can see where he's from. He's Keshan. MashaAllah.
Oh, okay.
Good to see you, brother Kamradinez. I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. Kamradinez. MashaAllah. Nice beard. Nice beard you have.
Yeah, Chechens, from the ones I've met, not many, are very good people, good brothers, you know. And I said I've gotten that question quite a few times because the genetics are pretty much identical between Lithuanian and Eastern Europeans.
Yeah, you kind of look like him. I got his picture. If you can look on YouTube, you see it. I put his picture there. You look like him. Y'all look alike. Like y'all could be related. That same kind of smile. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Any other questions or comments? By the way, please subscribe to our channels, guys. For those of you who are on Kick, we're streaming every day on Kick. Please subscribe to our channel. But for those of you who are on Twitch, he's on Twitch. For those of you who are on Twitch, please subscribe to our channel because we're streaming on Twitch. We're streaming on Kick. This is Kick. This is Kick. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Twitter, which is X. We're also streaming on Bigo. We're also streaming on, what's the other ones, guys? I can't remember them. Telegram. We're also streaming on Instagram and so many others I can't remember. Just whatever channels you guys are listening on, please subscribe to that channel, inshallah. Okay, if there's no other questions, we're going to close out. I want to remind everybody.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I wasn't here earlier, but I would like to, I don't know if this was brought up. It is said that Trump is having a lot of the people probably above him that are coming to him and telling him that this would be a terrible mistake to allow this to happen, that it would hurt him as it would hurt him. It would hurt him politically, and it would hurt him in a lot of ways, you know, but Trump doesn't seem to know which way to go. But I believe he's the type that believe that, you know, he wouldn't mind picking you know, the other guy to the curb if it would make him look good.
Well, it would be a disaster. China, Russia, you're talking about issues with delivery of oil, massive economic disaster for the people of Europe, especially who are more reliant on oil from that region. But also, we would see our oil prices skyrocket. I mean, people are barely getting by as it is. And then you throw extra bills at them, you raise these prices. Economic damages, not even called the human life, obviously, being the most important, but the economic damages would be severe, be massive, to have this corruption there. This cannot happen. It's got to be the line where, you know, the world starts to turn, you know, and I think the Palestine, I said on here before, was Allah's way of highlighting some of the dark figures in our community, the dark regimes in our community, exposing them, exposing the truth, and facilitating a worldwide awakening. And I think that those brothers and sisters over there, unfortunately, who were martyred, they were not martyred, obviously, for, you know, nothing. Their deaths will mean something. They'll cause a greater good and a trickle-down effect that will resonate through all aspects of all nations. We're going to see a turning, inshallah. obviously, God willing.
And you and that brother look like y'all could be brothers for real. He said, Allahu Akbar, it's always nice to see more Muslims streaming. Barak Allah fi y'all make. Yeah, y'all are just alike. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let me remind everybody, inshallah, we'll have the Islam Q&A show at 9:30, which will be 30 minutes Eastern Standard and 30 minutes, inshallah. So make sure you guys come and bring your questions about Islam, and we'll try to get them answered. We want to thank everybody for joining and participating, and I will try to put these videos up by tomorrow, inshallah. So make sure you guys don't forget to come to my YouTube channel, click on the shorts, and I won't delete this one. Inshallah, I'm on medication. I'm okay today. The fever's still coming and going, but it's okay. I'm taking several different medications. I feel a little better, but it's still messed up, man. So,
yeah, there's something going around. I was sick a few weeks ago for like all week.
I remember when you were sick. Your voice was not got it. He said mine is the most severe case of acute sinusitis he's ever seen. He said he don't know how I was walking around all this time with it and didn't know to come see a doctor before. I opened up my mouth and stuck my tongue out, and he said, "Oh my gosh." He said, "You have the worst case of acute sinusitis I've seen in a long time." And I feel a little better, but still there. My head is exploding. My face is on fire. It's just weird. My neck.
Yeah, mine was just really chronic weakness. You know, I didn't have couldn't stand up for prolonged periods of time.
That's me too.
Throat was tearing me up. I had no voice for 3 days.
That too. All of that. But mine ain't good. But I'm on so much medicine, it's just ridiculous. Okay, guys, inshallah, it's time for my grip. Inshallah, we're going to close out. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Subhana kalahuma. Oh, Geechee's in here. Let me let her in. Oh, you got her good. Subhana kalahuma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. See you in 30 minutes, inshallah.